Bob Johnson with PK&W Modelwerx coming at you with another video. This time my build of the Mantua, or is it Mantua, American Coastal Defense Cannon. If you want to skip the build portion of this video and just see some more pictures of the completed model, go to the last chapter of this video. This is the box for the Mantua American Coastal Cannon kit. You'll notice it shows bright brass fittings and barrel and a kind of a medium wood base. That isn't anything like what you get. The box is full of materials, and you can see that it is not the same color as what is on the front of the box or on the back of the box, which shows a bright brass barrel and fittings and some really nice wood. The base is not really that nice, and as you can see, the barrel is actually a copper color, and that copper color would not blacken. It would not blacken in brass black. It would not blacken with liver of sulfur. It just wouldn't blacken chemically. So I ended up painting it. Here you can see the pedestals. There's little two pieces of framing that need to be put together to create little pedestals for the base of the cannon. So I decided I was going to make a cannon that looked like it was in use and not one that was a showpiece, all polished brass. So I got some brass black and I blackened all of the brass fittings, and this worked perfectly. The brass didn't need to be stripped or anything like that. Here's a few pieces that had yet to have their bath in the blackening, but you see everything blackened up pretty quickly, including the chain. Now the deck is actually a piece of plywood, and the manufacturer provides a couple of strips of wood to cover up the long sides, but they don't cover up the short sides, so that seemed a little odd to me. So I sourced some planking from a wooden ship kit, and I used that, and I surrounded the entire deck with strip wood, and then I stained it. And here's the color stain that I used. I also used that on the little pedestal feet, and you can see what a difference it made just staining those. They got quite dark. And here I have weighted the base down. So I've glued the feet in place and should be ready to go. Now the kit comes with a nameplate, a brass nameplate, which is in Italian. So I had a nameplate done in English. I think it came out pretty well. The base with a couple of coats of gloss coat and the nameplate installed looks really sharp. I found a couple of thin, 4 thin feet to put on to protect furniture, make it sit level. So I was really happy with the way the base came out. Now it was on to building the model itself. Now when I went to assemble the carriage, I noticed that the front element of the carriage was going to interfere with the channel which would hold the frame for the axles. So that had to be notched out in order to provide space. And I used this little razor saw that comes from a Czechoslovakian company. I'll put a link to that in the description, in the show notes. Really handy tool. It's thinner than a razor blade, and it really worked great on this particular project. Here is the piece with the notch cut out. And then I just put the clamps on and glued it up. Note that the main axle for the carriage has to be installed before you put the carriage together. Now the frame that holds the axles and the axles themselves are actually all one piece in the kit, and they need to be cut. One thing that you need to remember to know is that the axle lengths provided in the kit are a little bit inaccurate. I had a little stub left over, about 1/4 of an inch of material. You don't need to have anything left over, so cut them a little bit longer than what the instructions say. Now, as I said, the barrel did not blacken, so I had to paint it. So the first thing I did was prime it, and I used Mr. Surfacer primer. I think it was their number 1400, and I was really impressed with that stuff. It really hid a lot of imperfections. I did file down the mold marks on the barrel before I primed it. Here you see a little bit of the primer chipped off, so it wasn't perfect, but I still did like that Mr. Surfacer primer. Kind of test fit the barrel and the unpainted carriage, and here are the wheels that I've already assembled and painted black. Now the frame itself is supposed to be painted red, and I painted mine using a very dark red. I used artist oils, mixed red and black together. And that would have been great if I had only done one coat and been fairly light, but where the ply of the plywood was going to show, I wanted to put some heavier coats on, and that really took days and days to dry. I would definitely use a different type of paint when if it came time to doing this again. At the end of the day, it worked out great. I put a little weathering on that red and it toned it down, and it really looked great, but it did take a long time to dry. One of the little side projects that you have to when you're building this kit is making this little elevation wedge, I call it, which actually holds the barrel at a certain height. You have to drill a hole and install that little handle, but you also have to sand down a rectangular block of wood into a wedge shape. So kind of a fun little diversion. So here I am putting the eyelets and the rings on the gun and the gun carriage, and you should know that I didn't drill all the way through the carriage. I just drilled maybe halfway through, and then I cut the eyelets to fit and super glued them into the holes. I didn't think it would be appropriate to drill all the way through. Then I installed the axles, and this is where I discovered that although I had cut the axles exactly to the length provided in the instructions, they still were so short that it was almost impossible to attach them to the carriage, so it was really difficult. As I said, I painted the barrel black. I used Montana black graffiti spray paint in order to paint. I used their black color to paint the barrel. Now here it is assembled, and it really looked like it was missing something. I've added the chain and I'm testing it on the base. It looks pretty good, but it just really lacked some snap. And so I took this Rub and Buff Competitor pewter color and put that on the barrel, and boy, that really made the thing pop and made the barrel look metallic. Best thing I did on the whole project. And now I've glued the cannon down. You can see I've added the elevation wedge. I've glued the wedge down. I've glued the barrel down to the wedge. I've installed the rope around the back of the barrel. And this has been glued down to the display base, and I'm just waiting for it to dry so I can install the tie-down ropes and things like that. I decided to mount it on an angle on the base. I think it gives a little bit more life and interest than having it just straight on, but really happy with how this turned out. Well, there you have it. That's how I built this beautiful Cannon model. Stay tuned for additional photos of the completed model. If you like this content, please consider subscribing. Mash that subscribe button for me and give me a thumbs up. Until next time, Bob Johnson with PK&W Modelwerx signing off. Whatever you do, keep on modeling.